And,
ones.
like 4 of them go to follow Sanjuro because they didn't trust him, But then the guards get the jump on those guys. And I'm like, oh, they kill them all? But no, I guess they just knocked him out as well, like you're saying. So I guess there was less death than I thought in this movie.
Yeah, the second sword fight with the guards guarding the wife and daughter is very quick. It's not a drawn-out one. But I think that they were killed there.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was another time when he was inside, and then a bunch of people got killed.
Right, he killed all those guys,
yeah.
I love that.
Then he tied himself up.
He takes out the sword, and he starts chopping up their ropes. And they're like, what are you doing? He's like, isn't it obvious? I'm letting them go. And then he kills everybody. And then and I like how he was telling the guys, look, do not pull your swords out. Like, a friendly sword is more dangerous than an enemy's or something like that. Which I botched the saying there, but friendly fire is basically what he's trying to avoid because he knows these guys have nothing on him. But he pulled the same trick as he did in the first movie where he's like, hey, I'm going to go help these guys. And then he kills them all and he runs back. He's like, oh my God, somebody killed all these guys. So, yeah, I mean, it's very consistent. Even though it's a very different story, he's a very consistent character. And he just, again, like we talked about last time, he's so nonchalantly cool.
Yeah.
I think, and like he's just always around to you. Like you forget sometimes he's in the scene. Like in the scene where they get the note through the river, and the nephew's like, "Oh, he's over there. We gotta save him." And he opens the door, but it's like a medium shot, and then the door closes in his face, and you're like, "What happened there?" And then you cut to the wide shot, and it's Sanjuro sitting there, and he closed the door. He's like, "What is your guys' problem?" And then they finally learn their lesson near the end. It's funny because you're like, oh, are they gonna? Because they've been disobeying him the whole time, And then at the end, like he can't signal them, and they're like, what if he's in trouble and he can't signal us? And they're about to go, and the guy from Godzilla, so I'll describe him, Dr. Sarazawa. He's like, wait. We've been botching his plans every single time we disobey. We need to wait for a signal. And that's the one time.
Which is great writing.
Yeah.
Which is wonderful writing.
And it makes sense because it's like, okay, we screwed up like 3 times now. We got to wait and see what happens. Although it would have been helpful for them to go.
That time.
So anyway, it's it's a very tight script, and it's very simple to. Even though we don't understand the like feudal Japanese society going on here, it's very streamlined enough for us to understand without a bunch of exposition. And I think it was like I really can't think of, it's not like a perfect movie or anything because what is, but like I really can't think of anything that really stuck out to me as like, oh, that's ridiculous.
Yeah. One of the other things that I thought that was really well done was a choice by Kurosawa is the scene where the plannikins, like the multiple plannikins, are going off. Right? So the plannikins are the things where they sit in them and they carry them from one place to the other instead of walking, and they don't know which one has the guy that they're looking for. And so they're talking back and forth, but all you can see is Sanjuro trying to nap and getting agitated that he can't continue to nap. Right? They don't see these things going from place to place. They just say, oh, it just went here. Oh, this one just went there. So I thought that was a really interesting choice for Kurosawa to do.
It's a nice montage without having to show all these different locations and stuff, definitely.
Yeah.
So.
And then another scene that made me laugh again. I can't remember what it was for because it's been a bit since I watched it. But the scene where they're cheering, I can't remember why they were cheering.
Oh, it's when is it when they get the signal through the pond? I think.
Is that it? And then they start cheering, and then they're like, shh.
Yeah.
And they gotta be quiet, and then they start cheering like really quietly.
And
then they realize that the guy for the closet is cheering with them, and then he just like goes back into the closet.
He slowly goes back in the closet. It's genius. No, I agree. And I don't know, like it's all these things are very refreshing. Maybe that's why we rate this film so highly, as we'll get to here. But because like it's simple, but it's also sophisticated. And I guess I didn't expect that from, again, my 21st century Western sensibilities. I'm like, this is a 60-year-old movie from Japan, and it's like on point across the board. Like it's got the comedy, it's got the smart writing. You don't think about little character moments like that in films that are 60 years old. Yeah. And
let me ask you this question going into this now. So now that we've done these. Mm-hmm. What were you expecting going into these 2 movies? Because you'd never seen them, and I'd seen them like a bunch,
right?
So
I don't know. I'd seen, some Bruce Lee movies and stuff like that. Maybe I was expecting something more like that. Just very one-dimensional. Here comes, the hero. He's going to, like, wipe out 50 guys, and there might be some cool kung fu in it, right? But not much depth at all. Like one-dimensional characters, and like Sanjuro is a very sophisticated character, and he has some very memorable supporting characters around him, you know, and yeah, and it was more about cleverness than, you know, showing off, you know, skills with a sword or something. So I guess that's maybe what I was. I didn't know what to expect, but I guess I just based it off what I had known from, you know, kung fu movies.
Because you'd asked me before, like, and I didn't answer the question here because we got sidetracked. But you'd asked me about the violence and whether or not I was expecting more violence. And I guess I can't really remember because it's been so long since I saw these for the first time, and I've seen them several times. So I just know the movies for what they are now. You know, and I know that the big violence scene in the both of them is really at the end of the movie, and it's really just one, right? It's really just one really violent scene.
Well,
so
this one, I mean, I didn't know what I was expecting. I was like, cool, they're gonna have an awesome sword fight at the end. I guess that's what I was thinking, showdown, Star Wars style, right? It's all gonna come back to Star Wars for me in this conversation. But they're like, all right, I don't want to do this. The other guy's like, well, I want to. Like, all right, well, here we go. It's like 3, 2, well, they don't count anything. The standoff alone is very tense because nobody pulls their sword out for like an uncomfortably long amount of time.
Yeah.
And then they draw, and then, you know, Sanjuro just cuts the guy's, you know, major artery in 2 seconds, and he explodes in blood and just falls over, and then didn't even have a chance. And I don't know, there's something to be said for that. Like, if you're gonna tease some awesome sword fight from 2 very capable samurai, and then not give it to us, you need to give us a good excuse not to. And I was like, well, okay, you know, good. I was not expecting this guy to explode in blood and fall to his death. I mean, it's a very impressive, like you were saying in the Kill Bill, right? The whole, like, you know, 5 touch of death and then dead, boom. That was a powerful way to end it, right? And then Sanjuro's mad still at the end because the guy's like, oh man, awesome, and he's like, no, this isn't awesome. This guy was just like me, and I had to kill him, and I hate that. So so that's some character growth too, because remember the wife had been telling him you shouldn't be doing that, and at the end he's like, you know, the old woman was right, and he keeps calling her the old lady, and they tell him not to do that, but he does it anyway. So but then he storms off. He's like, leave me alone, or I might kill you too. And he's like, all right, see you later. So it's just, but you know, maybe that's why there's no more movies, Brandon, because he learned his lesson from this film.
Right now, okay, so now reaching forward, right? Oh, I guess reaching back. Okay, because Seven Samurai was before this, right? But you've seen The Magnificent Seven, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so like that battle makes me think of a battle that's in Seven Samurai, and which is also recreated in The Magnificent Seven. So in Seven Samurai, we have an instance where a guy's like, they do the same thing where they're like, I'm kind of spoiling something from Seven Samurai, but they're like, the 2 people want to fight. The one guy says he's better, so they do it with their swords sheathed. And they do the full battle, and they're like, well, it looks like it was a tie. And the one guy who was the better swordsman says, no, I won. Right? And he says, well, fine, then let's do it for real, because I don't believe you. And they do it, and the other guy dies. Right? So he was right in that he did win. But it's also, so that character in Magnificent Seven is, I think it's Steve McQueen or whoever who can throw the knife. Right? And he throws the knife, and the other guy had the gun, and they do the test battle, and he says, oh, I guess it was a tie. And the guy that throws the knife says, no, I won. I can't believe you didn't see that. And then they do it again, and he kills him with the knife. Right? And he's like, I don't want to do this because it's a waste of life.
Right.
But they do it anyway. So it reminded me of that battle sequence from Seven Samurai. So
yeah, and I like there's a theme here of, like, you know, Sanjuro, he has to kill all these guys. Like, all this bloodshed is because of you guys. I didn't want to kill all these guys.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, he had to do it. So it's just an interesting character, you know. And at one point, the main guy of the 9 other samurai, the one that's always, like, speaking up against him, he's like, you never know what he's going to do. He's a monster. And, you know, he's not a monster, obviously, but it's true. You never quite know what he's going to do. I mean, you know he's going to do the right thing. You just don't know how he's going to go about it. So that's why he's an interesting character to watch, and all credit to Toshiro Mifune, because, like, to create really, and obviously the Clint Eastwood persona was based off this, but that's exactly what he is, you know? I mean, it's amazing how much of an analog that is to this. And the only other, kind of vibe I get from him is, like, Hugh Jackman as Wolverine or something like that. So that's the vibe I get, and just a delightful character, and these are a couple of delightful films. So
good. I'm glad you enjoyed them. Should we go to Buddy Tom's thoughts now?
Yes. So our friend Tom Elliott from the Twilight Zone podcast has sent us his thoughts from across the pond.
Hey fellas, it's Tom, and thank you for giving me a chance to put my 2 cents in on Sanjuro. What an interesting kind of situation we find ourselves in. Obviously, Toho Studios were a very sequel-happy studio because they made about 1 million Godzilla films, but then we have Kurosawa, who we look at as one of the landmark directors, and often those kind of people aren't particularly sequel inclined, I suppose. People like your Martin Scorsese's, the people who are considered the masters, they're not really the sequel people. But here we have this situation, and I think you mentioned last time, Zach, that this wasn't actually a Sanjuro film. It was supposed to be just a film, and they melded the two pieces together. So I guess I'll start with the things that I feel are perhaps inferior to last time round or didn't work as well, and then I'll go on to the good things. I think story-wise we have here a situation where we come in, or Sanjuro comes in, to a situation and the beginning of it has already happened. So I found it quite difficult to get invested in that. I didn't find the story as compelling as Sanjuro wandering into this town, seeing this situation with these two warring factions and deciding that he's going to try and profit from this, and in the end it turns out a particular way. But this time round, everything's already kind of in place, and it's just Sanjuro taking one of the sides and really going with it, which is fine in and of itself because it's good. I mean, last time round we spoke about how portable this is. He could go in and there could be a different situation in any town, and it's different enough, I suppose. We've still got, opposing factions and so on, but it's different enough, so I'll give it that. But the core thing, the gentleman who got kidnapped, I just didn't find it as compelling. Now, we also spoke about how Yojimbo was Kurosawa having a bit of a twist on the Western, and it gave way to some really great imagery, the use of the town, the way everything was framed, and I found that to be a bit lacking here. Now, that might have been an artistic choice. He might have just been saying, well, that was my take on the Western, but this time I'm just going, with a regular samurai movie. I don't know. But it felt a lot more enclosed, a lot more scenes were inside, a lot of talking inside. And when it did go outside, it didn't seem to have that breadth, that kind of epic feel to it like Yojimbo did. Not that it looked bad, it looked just fine, but it didn't quite look as good for me. So those were the things that maybe weren't quite as good this time round. What was as good this time round, I'll go with the positives now, is that Mifune is just as good, if not more value this time round than he was last time round. I don't think the overall story was as compelling, but what you need to have in a film like this is a compelling character at the center of it, someone you can't take your eyes off, and that is Mifune playing Sanjuro. I commented last time about how he always looked like he woke up after a rough night on the sake, and I think it seems to be the case even more so here. His introduction is him waking up in this building, he comes out and he's scratching himself, and I think part of your trivia, Zach, was that he was basing this portrayal on a dog, and I think you can really see that here. He's scratching himself, when conversations are going on, he might be lying down in the corner or lying on something, and he just always looks so messed up compared to everyone else who are immaculate. And it's this portrayal that I think keeps a pretty run-of-the-mill story on track and keeps us interested, because the men surrounding him aren't particularly that interesting. The chap who was like the main opposition, he was kind of interesting, but I think last time round he had a bit more presence too and a bit more charisma. He was good though. So it really is Mifune's show. And for that reason